One of my interests in the world as Mahdi Shaheeb Sher is the 80s decade. I think as Mahdi Shaheeb Sher, we have the Mahdi Shaheeb Sher 80s decade. It's kind of like the Mahdi Shaheeb Sher decade. If you look at all of the decades in history, they all have their colour and association. And I think with the 80s, it has my Mahdi Shaheeb Sher association. We had the 60s, which was a Russian decade. We had the 70s, which was kind of like an American steel decade. And with the 80s, I think when I was born in 1980, we had the 80s, and that's a very black decade. It's a Mahdi Shaheeb decade. It's very unusual to the rest of the decades. I think the only other similar decade is perhaps the 1930s decade, which is also maybe a black decade. But I think that the 1980s decade is a Mahdi Shaheeb Sher decade. It was kind of like electricity cables. It was kind of like renewal of transport. It was kind of moving away from the 60s and 70s and entering like an obsession of those decades, introducing maybe a modern decades with the 90s. The 90s kind of like the 60s decade. It's like a Russian decade. And then we have 2000 and 2010. 2020, and these are kind of like obsolete decades. So I think as Mahdi Shaheeb Sher, I've kind of introduced some kind of a modern decade for the past 3 decades, and I think that this has changed the world. I think that's what I've done as Mahdi Shaheeb Sher. I've changed the world with these decades. The 80s has kind of, I think the nicest thing I like about the 80s is that it introduced electricity for wider availability with batteries and electricity cables and things like that. So it was kind of like an electricity decade. We also introduced new diet as well, which is perhaps less important. But if you look at the 1980s, we had like a basic diet of kind of vegetables and milk and bread. But if you look at the decades following the 1980s, we have a lot of meat, red meat, availability of meat and cheese and pasta, and also frozen foods and ready meals. And we have a lot of tinned food as well, and jar food. And I think this is kind of like the development of food and diet to change people's biology so that they can be more healthier, stronger, and more intelligent, with more nutrition and intelligence. So I think we have changed as people following the 1980s with the new introduction of diet. We don't just have milk and bread anymore, and eggs and vegetables. We have pasta, lots of red meat like beef. We have lots of chicken. We have kind of pasta, lots of variety of tinned food. We have jars and ready meals, which is like space age food. That's what ready meals are. And frozen food as well. If you look at world history, we've never had frozen food, but now we have frozen food in freezers, and this frozen food is also like, it's kind of more developed than space age food because it's like cryogenic food. It's frozen food, and this is a new concept for food, that the fact that it can be frozen. So that has changed world history as well, cryogenic food and frozen food. So we have that as well. And I think with this new diet, it changes people's bodies and biology. They're a lot more active. They're perhaps more muscular as well. If you look at how thin and broad shoulders 1980s people were, they were very thin, pale, fragile and weak. But if you look at how people are now in modern society, they're kind of a lot more active, a lot more red-blooded, they're a lot more muscular and stronger. They're a lot more intelligent and acute. They have more vibrant intelligence. They have hand-eye coordination and hearing intelligence. And they have eyesight and hand-eye coordination. So I think we have progressed as human people and perhaps animals as well. So I think diet does do a lot of that. We have vitamins, nutritions, we have kind of like Yakult and kind of Actimel and lots of yogurt drinks. We have lots of ice cream as well, lots of chocolate, and lots of hot drinks and lots of nutritious vitamin drinks and a lot of vitamins as well. We didn't have vitamins before, but we do have lots of vitamins as well. So I think we have developed as a people. We're able to absorb a lot more shock, absorption and danger. We're more modern as people, rather than weak and fragile in the environment. I think we can withstand more with the elements and with the danger and progress of the information age, technological development and human progress. So I think we are quite steadfast now as people, and we're able to move up in the world. So I think that's one of the things I like about the 1980s, Mahdi Shaheeb Sher decade. Thank you.